We are encountering all the signs that our Prophet ﷺ informed 1400 years ago of the end times before the day of judgment. And for instance, in a hadith from Suyuti, the life of my community will not exceed 1500 years. It's Hijri 1400s that the moral values of Islam will rule the world under the leadership of the Prophet Jesus ﷺ and Hazret Mehdi ﷺ, after which will again be terrible degeneration, at the end of which will come the hour. Since we are in this period currently, how can the Islamic world prepare itself for welcoming these blessed persons, the Prophet Jesus ﷺ and Hazret Mehdi ﷺ? Inshallah.
There are several issues really here. Definitely ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. The Quran says that corruption has appeared in the sea and also on land because of what people have done. And one can talk about natural phenomena as simply taking place on its own, or rather than there is a certain link between the metaphysical and the physical. The universe is not really a mechanical universe in the absolute sense. Practically everything in the universe is contingent. The universe is not necessarily existent in the sense ultimately there will be an end to this universe. The Prophet ﷺ taught us in the hadith, if the day of judgment is about to unfold and you have a seedling, a small plant in your hand, if you have a seedling in your hand, the Prophet ﷺ said, and if you are capable of planting this seedling before really the hour manifests itself, that's it, ultimately you cannot. And if you can do that, do that. Meaning, continue working, continue doing that which is good until the very last moment.
Well, basically, the hadiths, there are many hadiths actually, in the four sects. All of the imams believe in the end times, and the hadith is sahih for the end times, the signs given by our Prophet, and they came to be true. So, if the hadiths happened, for example, occupation of the Afghanistan, Iraqi war, sun and moon eclipses in the month of Ramadan, which happened in 1981 and 1982, yes. 2 following years actually, 15 days apart. And then comets, Halley comet, and the Lulin comet is described as with the 2 tails, a comet, brighter than normal, will move against the objects in the hadith, according to the hadith, all other comets. And before this comet droughts, this comet passed on 2009, Lulin comet with 2 tails, yes. And there were droughts, it's called global warming. And after this comet, floods, our Prophet said, and there are floods everywhere, in Asia, in America, in Africa, in Australia. And so Iran-Iraqi war, and our Prophet said there will be no winner of this war. That started in 1980, Hijrah 1400, and lasted for 7 years. There was no winner of the war. That is in the media. A bloody attack to the Kaaba as the sign of the emergence of the year of the Mehdi, our Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this happened the first Muharram, Hijrah 1400, 21st November 1979.
MashaAllah.
That was the first time a bloody attack happened in the Kaaba, and there was bloodshed. And another bloodshed in the Kaaba, but not exactly in the Kaaba, but close to the place. Our Prophet mentioned the place. That happened in 1987. Alhamdulillah, more than 150 signs are happened, which means we are living in these times, inshallah, and we will see the Islamic dominion, Islamic union that we just talked about, inshallah. These are the glad tidings, because our Prophet also says in another hadith, give the glad tidings of the Mahdi, inshallah. So every Muslim is obliged to talk about as glad tidings. We want to see the religion prevails the word and peace happening in the world, because in the 20th century, because of irreligious philosophies, because of Darwinism, communism, fascism, more than 350 million people were killed. The world became irreligious. Darwinism controlled 99% of the world, and this inevitably led to Marxism. Half of the world became Marxist: communist Russia, China, Cambodia, Vietnam, Cuba, in the East Bloc, in the Eastern Europe. So basically, because of irreligious philosophies, wars, bloodshed, and now inshallah, Allah will prevail His religion, Allah will do it with Mehdi and Isa alayhi salam, and we will see justice everywhere. You talked about injustice. You're right. I mean, there's so much injustice everywhere. Not in the northern part and the eastern, southern part of the world, but even, for example, imagine the United States. This is the richest country of the world. But I lived in the United States more than 10 years, and there were, as Jerry knows better actually, there was homeless people. Well, I mean, how could that be possible? So much money is going to the weapon industry, and there are homeless people in the United States, and there are people dying of starvation in Africa, in all over the world, and wars and bloodshed and oppression. So, alhamdulillah, inshallah, these good days are coming. Jerry, can we have your opinion on that, inshallah?
Yeah, there's a lot on that. The actual amount that the U.S. is spending per year is about $1.3 trillion a year. And quite incidentally, from what I found out tonight doing some more research, that is half, exactly almost half of everything the U.S. brings in. So they're spending half of everything that comes in back out on war. And what you said about the homeless, not even here, it's all over. But we have about 5 million homeless people in the U.S.
5 million?
And 5 million. And there are about 18 million empty houses in the U.S. Due to foreclosures from banks. So rather than to put those houses to use and get some of these homeless people off the streets, and we're talking women, children, babies, I mean, all the way from newborns up to the elderly that are living under bridges and in tents. And basically what it is because of a Marxist capitalist society. I get into a lot of discussion with people here about this because to me the morality in that is non-existent. The social, economic, and geopolitical society that we have in America nowadays is it's really sad if you know what's going on and how it got here. Clear back into the 1930s, we had Marxist ideals and communist ideals that were mixed in with our education system even. And these aren't theories, these are actually historical facts that these different departments were built with Nazi communist ideals behind them because they seen in the U.S. that this type of, if you will, brainwashing worked in communist Germany and in Russia and earlier in the 1900s, how well they worked to train a population into a way they wanted them to go. So what we have here now is a Darwinist, what I refer to as a Darwinist, Leninist, Marxist society. And that is because most people here are more concerned with themselves than they are with their neighbors. There are a lot of people here, I can give you one example. In New York, when Sandy came in, there was one lady in particular that her car was stranded, and her and her two boys, which incidentally were Irish, she had them in her arms, and the car stalled out. She got out of the car, and the water swept the boys out of her arms. She went to different houses, so the water was not up high enough that nothing could be done, but she went to these different houses, and I think there was 8 or 10 houses she went to, and people slammed the door in her face rather than to ask her if she needed help to find her young boys. They were, I think, 6 and 8 years old. People wouldn't help her. They wouldn't even talk to her. They shut the door in her face. This is the kind of thing we have. It's not the majority of America, but we have this here. There is a lot of it here. And the morals and the integrity that come along with religion and with religious teachings, and a lot of people here, even if you mention religion, they want to call it an occult just because of the way that they've been trained through years to think. In America, one of the big sayings here, especially in my generation, is if you want to keep peace, don't talk about politics or religion. The biggest problem I think we have in this country is not talking about religion, is that our government, I think, since the 1930s has been programmed to try and get religion out of our government and out of our lives so that people have to rely more on the government than they do on faith. Because when you take faith away from a people or from a nation, when you take faith away from that, when you take their faith in God, when you take their faith in Allah away from that, they have to have something to turn to or they have nothing. And then you have apathy, which is a big problem we have here now, which is apathy. So a lot of the people here, I think, as far as the Western world and the money that's being spent elsewhere, as Akhtar said, $1.3 trillion on war. They don't want us there. I mean, there is a need for the U.S. to be in these other countries. They do need help, but the help that we're giving in a lot of these places is not the kind of help they need. There's the Turkish Islamic Union that could be worked, and I think myself would be going a lot further if the U.S. would step back and let that work. all the religious leaders in the areas have come together and discussed this and have come to agreements on this before with Adnan Akhtar. And from what I can tell with my research and what I know about my own country, is that a lot of what we're doing in these Middle Eastern countries is getting in the way of peace a lot of times. There are reasons we need to be there. There's reasons we don't. But truly, the $1.3 trillion being spent to kill other people could be used to put people up in houses. And all the banks we have here, if they were acting morally and working in a business where they actually wanted to be upstanding and have respect, could take these 18 million empty houses and put 5 million of these people in them and get them off the streets.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
It'll